Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast. So glad you decided to join us again today. I know I say again and welcome back and realize that even though we're 70-some episodes in, that this may be the first time somebody's listening to us. So if that's the case, welcome. The podcast is pretty laid back. We just have conversations with pastured pig growers all across the country about their operation, their setup, the challenges and obstacles they face, and of course the successes and just all around good times they have on pasture. As usual, I have another good interview lined up for you all this evening. Before we get into that, let's do some housekeeping real quick. As I mentioned on our last episode, we hit the 20 benchmark on our Patreon supporters. Really appreciate that. Now we're shooting for 40. There's some other neat features we're going to add on in 40. So if you would, please consider supporting us as little as $5 a month. You can help us out and allow us to expand our pasture pig media. So talking along the lines, we've made some really good progress on the website. But one of y'all reached out to me and actually had a really good suggestion. I think didn't even think about it, but maybe this will be helpful. And I'd like additional input to see what you guys think. So obviously we know that social media is where we spend a lot of time. The groups, the different pastured pig groups that we spend time communicating on. And that seems to be kind of the anchor of communication, which is great. The one thing we run into, however, is we risk having those groups blacklisted when we start selling livestock on them. In fact, I'm sure you've seen some of the admins say, hey, don't do this, don't do that. But there's still sometimes that somebody will use some creative language to say up for discussion or looking for a new home type of thing. Facebook's not dumb, of course. They can figure that out pretty quickly. So with that being said, what I was thinking is, do I invest in the time and some effort to develop a classified section on the pasturedpig.com website that we're building? And what that would be is a free opportunity for people to submit listings with their contact information, of course. It obviously have to be around pastured piggery, whether it's genetics, whether it's feeders, equipment, supplies, that type of stuff. Then we would allow that to be. It has to obviously be in the realm of raising pigs. But let me know what you think about that. Let me know if that's worth developing. I know how to do that. I know a way to put that on a website, but just wasn't sure if that would be, if enough people would find that valuable. So comment, if you would, in a quick email, troy@redtoolhouse.com, or you can just go to our website, redtoolhouse.com, and use the comment section there, the comment form on Contact Us, and let me know what you think. If I get enough people to say, hey, that's a good addition, then we'll definitely look at adding that. I think that could possibly be helpful, allow us to still responsibly sell our livestock, our feeders, some of our genetics, rent-a-boar, whatever it may be. But still, and then we have control over it, not have to worry about social media, people that are influenced the opposite direction, shutting us down when we're trying to do responsible farming practices. One quick note before we move on with our interview. I know from doing 70 interviews with people across the country that most of us have tractors to help get the farm chores done. Well, one of the many benefits of having a tractor is the ability to incorporate various attachments, either on the 3-point hitch end or the quick attach front end, if you have a loader. For several years now, Titan Equipment has helped us here at Red Tool House with the farm chores via a couple attachments. The 3-point hitch auger has been very helpful for setting posts for our building projects or corner posts on our permanent fencing. I was just using the 6-inch wood chipper earlier this week to make a whole bunch of chips for the pig trough area that has become very muddy in the sacrificial area already this season. If you are looking for tractor equipment from hay spears to flail mowers, check out Titan Equipment. Our affiliate link will be included in the show description. All right, well, let's move on to our interview. Tonight, I have on the podcast AJ Granelli, and he's with Homegrown Pork and Poultry in Batesland, South Dakota. Now, AJ is going to tell us his story, of course, and give us some details about what he's got going on there. But this is something a little different. I have not run into this one yet in all the interviews we've done. So AJ is near the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And not only is he raising pastured pork for sales, of course, for part of his business, but he's really involved heavily in this food sovereignty initiative with the reservation. And I really like the angle that he's taken on that. I love this. I mean, to me, that really plugs in heavy to this idea of supporting local. So not only support local as us, the farmers and producers, hey, support us, we're local, but actually supporting the local people that don't necessarily have access to higher quality food. So I really like what AJ's got going on here. So instead of me trying to tell him more about it, let's jump right in and have AJ explain what he's got. Welcome, AJ.
Hey, Corey, how's it going today?
Going really well. I appreciate you taking the time to set aside some time out of your schedule during the day here to talk with me. And I know you've got a lot going on over there in South Dakota, so I appreciate you sitting down, and we won't burn up too much of your time today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Got a flat tire out there waiting for me sometime this afternoon.
Oh, goodness. Is that on the vehicle or is that on a farm implement?
It's on the truck.
Yeah, that's great. That just really kind of makes the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's when I have to go somewhere, I guess I'll fix it.
Yeah. Well, at least it's not in the middle of January in South Dakota, and you got to go and fix it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so tell me a little bit about Homegrown Pork and Poultry. So give me kind of a summary of your farm.
Yeah. So I raise pastured poultry and pork. We do chickens on pasture and turkeys, and raise pigs through a rotational grazing kind of area. We do supplement, and so we farrow to finish. We are extremely remote, western South Dakota. I'm located on the south side of the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Our nearest city, I guess you'd call it, would be Rapid City. It's about 2-hour drive for us. And so we are just trying to make it work out here in the middle of the prairie.
Wow. Yeah. Excellent. So, okay. So you just kind of answered my next question there. So I'm not familiar with the topography of southwestern South Dakota. So is it all flat prairie land? Is it like high desert like you see represented on TV for South Dakota, or is it considered fertile area?
So I live in kind of a valley that's surrounded by rangeland. So there is a little bit of farming, kind of like a 20 mile stretch right around me along a small highway. And we are just south of the Badlands in South Dakota. So it's dry. There's Badland formations around, which are, people that don't know and haven't been out here, it's like a hardened, dry mud. So every time it rains, any bare spots look different the next day, sort of thing.
Right.
We're kind of stuck between the Badlands and the Sand Hills of Nebraska, 15 miles from the border to Nebraska, and the Sand Hills start right at the edge of South Dakota. So some years those are largely sand dunes, and some years they have more grass than others. This year's a little bit drier for us, and so it's brown a lot of the year, just rolling hills of grass.
Interesting. So so in your pre-screening information, you kind of said you're in a bit of a food desert. So does that slow ag that's kind of short in that area, or any ag? Is anybody doing any massive agriculture in that area right now? That 20.
So there's definitely a lot of large scale agriculture. Cattle is going to be the biggest thing. There are kind of in some areas, some people run some sheep, but largely cows are the biggest agriculture, whether that's cow calf, and there's lots of bull breeders and and all different facets of the industry there. Some farming, large-scale farming, monoculture farming goes on. But really when we say that we're in a food desert, we mean that we don't have access to a lot of smaller scale and the actual food that gets produced. So everything gets shipped in here. On the reservation itself, there's one grocery store, which is, if you come from any decent sized city, it'd be just about the smallest grocery store you were ever in. And then there's a handful of convenience stores around. Pine Ridge Reservation's about the size of Connecticut, so I think we have 5 or 6 convenience stores and one grocery store. So really, most people end up driving at least 2 hours, depending on where you are, up to Rapid City to go to a Walmart or Safeway or something like that. So access to fresh food is pretty limited. To you grow your own garden or you don't really have it.
Yeah, interesting.
So that's kind of what we describe as a food desert.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it sounds like logistics are an issue, and we'll get into this as we go through each of our topics here. But it sounds like maybe the theme of this is how you manage logistics, being so remote and so rural, and when it comes to things going either in or out of your farm.
Right. I mean, so that's kind of how we got started. My neighbors and I. About 7 years ago, I didn't originally grow up in Western South Dakota. I'm from New York State originally, and I moved here about 10 years ago and was a teacher for 7, and we just had trouble getting food. I moved way out in the country, and when I say way out in the country, I mean we would get stuck for a week or 2 at a time in the middle of winter when it snowed, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So I had never really owned animals. I had a pet dog and maybe some goldfish growing up, and we bought 5 laying hens and got some eggs, and we're super excited that we didn't have to drive 70 miles to the little grocery store or something like that. And then the neighbors started buying some eggs, and then the next summer we bought 20 chicks, broilers. And we raised those, and all the neighbors wanted to buy them, so we bought 20 more. And then we thought, we should get a couple pigs. So we got a couple pigs, raised those. I think that was first 2. We sold one and ate the other, and then got a few more the next year. And then after doing that for about 3 years, we bought a sow and a couple gilt and a boar, and started breeding our own livestock. Just because, again, challenging to find the quality and type of pork that we wanted. So it's kind of just bloomed from that.
Yeah. Wow. Excellent. Well, okay. So you said a lot there. I'd like to back up and unpack a little bit if we can. So first of all, from New York State to Western South Dakota, I'm sure a little bit of a culture shock to some degree.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot more trees back east.
Yeah. A little greener. Yeah. So you said we. So is it partner, wife? Is that somebody?
I just a couple neighbors and close friends. We lived out on the same ranch, and kind of collectively, they also had moved to the area from different parts of the country. So that was a husband and wife team. And at this point, my now girlfriend is largely involved in all this stuff. So we being collectively anybody that wants to give a nice helping hand and participates, really.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So I assume it sounds like you said that with moving from New York to South Dakota, it was originally your job in education, primary education. I assume you took a job, come to South Dakota to kind of get your career going. Was that motivation?
Well, prior to moving here, I managed a nursery, so I was in horticulture, tree and shrubs, and I got actually offered a really great job, and I kind of decided that I wanted to try something else. I had been doing that for about 10 years. And so I went back to school, moved to South Dakota to the Pine Ridge Reservation and taught just to kind of find something new. I had not really explored many avenues. And of course, I find myself kind of full circle working outside again now. I'm no longer a teacher, but I am still involved with the schools. We're working on teaching some small scale agriculture, and we just recently got the school that I had previously worked at, we got a farm to school grant through the USDA. So we're going to put up some high tunnels and work with just local agriculture, soil health sort of stuff with some of the students, and build something that wasn't there before. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh man, that's excellent. Excellent. I'm sure there's some really interesting stories you could tell about working on the res and all the things that go along with that.
Yeah. So it's essentially a different country within this country.
Yeah.
I mean, I am a guest on the lands of the Lakota people, right? And so it's a really unique experience. And just the different types of people that I've been able to meet, I never would have been able to get in living in the Hudson Valley in New York State. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So it's been rewarding, and coming up on here 10 years. So kind of in now.
Yeah. Yeah. So very cool. So let's talk about the evolutions of once you're there in South Dakota teaching, and then acquisition of farmland or leasing of farmland. How did you go from? Because I would assume that when you moved to South Dakota as a teacher, you weren't necessarily buying hundreds of acres or looking for hundreds of acres in that situation.
No.
So tell us about that transition and what you ended up with there.
Yeah. So when I first moved out, the reservation schools typically have teacher housing. They're always trying to incentivize however they can to get staff in extremely rural places all across the country. I don't think that's super unique to this rural location. It's hard to keep people in education. So I lived in teacher housing. And then I decided that, I live in the middle of nowhere. Why do I live in the tiny little town it's about 500 people, but neighbor is 100 feet from me. So I found an old ranch house on the edge of someone's ranch and traded her for a couple of years of fixing the place up so that I could live there. And then did that for about 4 years and had a great little place way out in the country. It was about 20 miles to a paved road.
Wow.
And then decided that we were going to move a little bit closer to the road, or I was. And so I was able to find about 10 acres to rent that had a farm site decades ago. So there's some old abandoned buildings. There was an electrical hookup, and so I built a little a shed cabin sort of thing and placed it here. So I rent the acreage and where I keep my house from an old retired lady that she still owns. I think she's got 2 or 3 sections. So a couple thousand acres. And it's the old farm site that her husband, I guess, mostly grew up on, and she lives about a mile down the road in the house they built about 30 years ago. And we have a great relationship. She loves seeing the old farm site active and my big gardens and pigs and chickens. And she always tells stories about how she raised her kids milking a cow and collecting eggs and driving them to town 30 miles every week when her kids were young. So, she's 80 years old, has never lived more than about 25 miles from here. So it's great to talk to her and just hear the evolution of the place here. You know what I mean? Over the past few decades.
Yeah. And
that got me down to here.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, I just love that story because there's so many people that I run into or talk to when it comes to either homesteading or farming or something, and they just say it's just the barrier to get land, to buy land is just so high right now. You just can't do it, and they always have the conversation. Well, why don't you lease? Why don't you rent something? Well, I don't want to. I can't do that, or there's nobody that's going to do that, or I'm going to lease, and they're going to tell me to leave as soon as I get it fixed up. But I love to hear stories like yours of where you're dealing with an aging population of landowners, and that's circumstance. So if I heard you correctly, you're 10 acres out of a 1,000+ acre ranch. So you're in the scale of things, you're like a little percentage over here in the corner, but you're utilizing the land, and the property owner is nostalgic from what she's seeing you do and raise, and it's a win-win situation. She's obviously getting income from it. She's getting the personal touch of knowing that somebody's using the farm, and of course, you're getting access to land that you don't have to go out and have all that money up front to purchase.
Exactly. I mean, it wouldn't have been reasonable me growing at the time when we moved down here, a couple hundred chickens and a couple dozen hogs. You know what I mean? It's so purchasing land kind of a little out of touch. And it wasn't easy finding this spot. And, there's lots of people that are leery also about somebody bringing pigs and saying that they want to run them around on their grass and things like that. And
Right.
Like, well, I don't know.
Right, exactly.
But
especially a New Yorker with pigs. I mean, that makes it even worse, right?
Exactly. So when I first got out here, a lot of people were always like, this guy, he's in Easter, he doesn't even know anything from a hole in the ground. And,
right.
And now it's pretty funny. Everybody drives by and they're always pulling in. And here in the West, in the Midwest, visiting is used, or to visit is used as a verb a lot. And every interaction is truly like authentic. And right, my neighbors, like I said, the landlady's a mile, and the next closest neighbor is about 3 miles to the north. So we're pretty rural, and it's nice to be able to have the comfort, and you pull in and visit with your neighbors for a couple hours, and everybody loves seeing something going on. Everybody's always pulling in. During the fall, while the turkeys are growing, they usually rotate around right next to the road, which is a few hundred yards from my house, and at night they're all perched on their coop. It's on a trailer, or not their coop, but it's kind of like just a wagon where they all sit up, and the headlights of the cars light them up, and everybody all falls always telling me, and oh my God, all the turkeys, they look right at you when you go by, and you all see the pigs down in the bottom and everything, and so it's great.
Right, yeah, no doubt. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So of course, I'll ask you this question, then we'll get on to some details of the farm itself. But so which is worse in your experience right now? Is it a New York Hudson Valley winter or a Western South Dakota winter? Which hurts more?
South Dakota winters are pretty tough. Yeah, it freezes, and it freezes real hard. The term that they call it, I think the point of isolation or something like that. It's the center of North America. So about 3 miles from here is the point that is farthest from any ocean in North America. Our temperature fluctuation is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Every year we get into the negative 20s for a week or two, and every summer we're into the hundreds for a couple weeks. So it's a wide range.
Yeah, sounds fun.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not for the weak.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, God bless you and all your efforts out there. So, so it's funny. I'm looking at your website, and I'll post this information down in our show notes so you guys can see it as well. But in my mind, I don't know why, for some reason, when I think of the Dakotas, I always think of it just totally slipped my mind. But there was a movie with Val Kilmer, and I don't know why I'm going this direction, but it was about the Indian Reservation. He's an FBI agent out there, but he's got Native American blood, whatever. So it shows all this Badland stuff, and that's what I just keep picturing in my mind. Is like, my goodness, AJ's out here in the middle of this god awful desert, highlands type thing. But looking at the pictures on your website, it's beautiful prairie land, green grass, you've got flowers, and just all kinds of neat things that you've got that you're representing there. So it's fascinating for a West Virginia boy like me who's not been all over the country to to think of one thing, but then see the reality in your pictures and what you're doing there.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, definitely seasonal too. And, you can go 10 miles to the north and there's some taller hills and they're totally capped in pine trees.
Yeah.
And then another 10 miles, you'll be surrounded by badlands where almost nothing is growing. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's definitely a big range of landscape.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, great. So let's drill down here a little bit. So you're on 10 acres with your hogs. It sounds like broiler chickens. You've got turkeys. Do you have egg layers? It sounds like as well. Is that something you sell?
We don't. I don't really do eggs.
Yeah.
Just the logistics of transporting and figuring out how to get enough to market at a time.
Sure.
It has been a challenge, and so we've steered away from egg layers. There's a few dozen chickens roaming around the place that lay eggs, and some of the close neighbors get eggs here and there. But primarily the business is pork and then pastured poultry also.
Yeah.
Meat. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I heard your rooster in the background earlier. He was giving some commentary there. So. Very good. So, as far as pig breed and setup, explain a little bit about your pig setup, how you're pasturing them out there in South Dakota, and then you maybe land on the details you've discovered with your breed and why you've gone in that direction.
Yeah. So, I started with, I got a Berkshire sow that was bred when I picked her up. So that was our first. The guy was like, I don't know, I think that maybe sometime in a week or a month, and didn't really know much about pigs. Said, all right, yeah, we'll have piglets sooner or later.
Sure.
And then sure enough, they dropped, and she did great, and we had basically no knowledge about farrowing, and she was just in like a field pen on about an acre paddock by herself, and popped out some piglets a few days after we brought her home. And she did great, built a nest, and we were just kind of so amazed. And then did a little more research and kind of starting to figure out how I wanted to work this whole system. So I knew that we needed to get a boar. I think that we AI'd once or twice, and I bought a young boar and a young gilt from, I'm sure you've heard of Carl Blake. And so that was an interesting day. Oh, I got a story there.
Yeah. Yeah. I always like stories about Carl.
Yeah. So he put these two piglets on a transport trailer, and it was going across 80, which is about 4 hours south of here. So got up early in the morning to go meet the transporter at a Walmart right off the exit on I-80 in southern Nebraska, get all the way down there. Great. Got to meet the guy, get the piglets, have them in dog crates in the back. Everything's going great. About 5 miles back to the farm, 5 miles from the farm. Meanwhile, we've been driving 8 hours back and forth, and look in the rearview mirror, and the dog crate comes apart, and the top goes flying out. Sure enough, that little gilt jumps out and starts heading right into the sandhills. And the sandhills are sandy with patchy grass and little cactus all over the place. We spent the next me and my buddy who came with me, we spent the next 3 hours chasing this little piglet miles into the sandhills, and then she turns around and miles back, and we ended up catching her about 50 feet from the truck.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, I was not letting her go that day.
Yeah, wow, man. I appreciate your resolve, because I'd have been like, all right, that's a wild one. I'm going.
Yeah.
Feral hog.
We doing enough, we felt like we spent a little money on some decent pigs, and we're going to raise them up right and everything. And, oh, man, nobody wanted to quit.
No doubt. Yeah, wow. Yeah.
It was pretty funny. So I brought them home. So I had a Berkshire, a Swabian Hall Mulefoot cross, and a Mulefoot large black cross. And we've kind of stuck with that. I've AI'd a couple times in, and so that was like 4 years ago. And that's been our stock. We have raised out some gilts and still breeding back to that. And so really, what we're trying to do is keep that like beautiful meat that we like, and we select based on what seems to grow out the best in our conditions. Who's gonna? There's not many second chances here. If they don't farrow well, they move on and get sold at the farmers market, basically.
Yeah.
So we're constantly looking to improve and always open to bringing in other genetics if we feel like we need to, but also keeping the best of our best. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So
yeah.
Where are you right now with your breeding sets? What do you have right now?
So we've got 3 sows right now, and there's a couple potential gilts that came out of a nice large litter in the spring that may get to stick around for some spring breeding. And so we got 1 boar and three good sows that I need to make sure that they wean at least 16 piglets a year. That's kind of where we need it at. And so if they don't do that in our harsh environment, then we move on to give somebody else the option.
Yeah.
So some seasons the farrowing goes great, and some seasons it's borderline. But we're pretty much a consistent basis. About every other month or every 2 months, we have a litter on the ground, and that's kind of insulated us from major weather events. If we do have a farrowing where something goes wrong, and we're not losing dozens of piglets by having everyone farrow at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
So we keep the breeding stock kind of separated and put in the boar as needed, and pull sows that are getting close to farrowing. But they farrow entirely on the pasture. I expect them to make nests. We have shelters out there in all the paddocks. So we run about a dozen paddocks, and that's spread over about 3 to 4 acres of the farm here. Through the coldest winter months, we're primarily giving hay instead of just continually beating up the pasture. Mm-hmm. I like to plant just through broadcast, and I find my sweet spot seems to be 24 hours before the pigs move, and it's always changing what we're seeding down in paddocks depending on the time of year.
Yeah.
And then all the growers, they are put together after weaning. So we do keep like a mixed group of growers, and as we have processing every couple months as well, then we pick off who's ready for market.
Okay. So you've got varying age groups in your growers, it sounds like. And then have you had any issues with far as feed ration, and then being able to get the bigger ones knocking the little ones out, or how's it?
So with plenty of feed space, we seem to do pretty good. Typically there's 30 to 40 growers, varying age. And sometimes if a group's weaned a little bit smaller, we'll keep them separate. We like them to get to 60 pounds or so that they can rest a little bit. But I think that like our herd size seems to be good. And since we've been doing this for a year and a half now, we haven't seen really major changes on grow out times. But we have seen major changes on reduced labor by having larger sets of growers. I don't know that we'll be able to stick with that forever. I know that some concerns, biosecurity, a lot of people like in-out, like complete groups. But right now that seems to be working for us, are pretty frequent moving and really selecting hard to make sure nothing gets to breed that doesn't thrive in the pretty basic minimal labor setup that we like to have. Nothing's mechanized here. So it's all by hand. We have feeders that we go down and pick up a ton at a time and fill up feeders, or a couple tons at a time. but no tractors or any big equipment here on the farm.
Wow, that keeps your overhead low then. That's good.
That's the idea. We just being rural on the reservation, costs need to be kept down as much as possible. Already, it is like we obviously have to sell our meat for significantly more than what's at the grocery store, but the better we can keep closer. The reservation hovers around an 80% unemployment at any given time.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's definitely, there's a lot of poverty around. There's not a ton of money. And so we try to work kind of in that realm. About a little better than half of our products go up to Rapid City and the Black Hills, which is in western South Dakota. That's where like Mount Rushmore, Crazy Horse Monument is and whatnot. And then about half stays down here. Almost a quarter of our business is we work with a few food banks and local youth centers where we collect donations from people around the country. And essentially what they're doing is they are purchasing fresh local food from me and a few other people that kind of raise some vegetables and whatnot. And we distribute that through food banks to people that would they find themselves food insecure at home. They don't have access or the financial means to get food like as this high quality. So that's a big part of our business too, which is really great.
Yeah. Wow, man, that's a whole podcast right there. That's something that really intrigues me. And I run into that quite a bit actually here in West Virginia. When I put on my other hat as a marketing consultant, I work with a nonprofit that is basically homeless and addiction recovery and those type of things. And that's the thing we just keep seeing, that the impoverished people just don't have access to the wholesome food. And it's amazing the health benefits, especially when you're dealing with addiction recovery, the health benefits you get out of quality food versus the processed food that normally these men and women get, because it is a commodity. It is stuff that's just kind of laying around, or it's second or third hand. So you kind of get you normally see them get the dregs of the dregs, and then when you provide this great quality food that's been locally raised, it's tangible, the benefits you can see with people in recovery efforts and homeless efforts.
100%, yeah. So we do a lot of work with what's called the food sovereignty initiatives around here. There's several organizations that we're trying to work so that more food can be produced and within the area as opposed to shipping it in. So we feel that we are a part of that movement and those system buildings here. And so by just being from a different area and also having connections kind of around the country, it's really nice to people that do have disposable income know that their dollars are going directly towards really high quality stuff. So that's great. We love it.
Yeah, so I'd like to unpack that model a little bit. So it sounds like, and just kind of in summary, make sure I'm putting my thoughts together. So about half of your product is going north to where that is retail cuts or wholes and halves going to end user clients, customers. But then the other is sticking here because you've got a philanthropic area. Now, you're not the nonprofit, but you're just providing food through the nonprofit that purchases from you.
Yeah. So when we first started doing this a couple of years ago, we tried to handle distribution, but it made a lot more sense for us to kind of have separate accounts. It's purchased, and then as food banks and a couple of the organizations that handle distribution of food and things like that. So we love like partnering with our local food bank and once a month everybody will show up and be able to take home a chicken or like some pork chops. People that would not have access to that are rely on EBT once a month sort of thing. So it's really rewarding and a great part of how we can be better members of our community, we think.
Yeah, no, that's excellent, man, and applaud you for that. That's really neat to see, and it's also it's I think what makes it so intriguing, and this is the marketing guy in me, but that's a sustainable model because it's I assume it's still profitable for you as a farmer. You wouldn't continue doing it, but it provides the vehicle for people to get access to food that would normally be priced out of the range or not be available to them. But it allows you to still have a sustainable model where you can still pay for your overhead and generate the income you need.
Exactly,
to
right. We need to hit a certain amount of just quantity of production to even out our overhead, and so it keeps another side of income. It's by no means our entire. We do a lot of work to make sure that we are marketing retail wise locally, but to have that as a portion, kind of diversify our income channels is really great for us.
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously, I know we're a pig podcast, but I always talk about.
Yeah. Sorry, I keep tangent on all this stuff. We
can
talk more about pigs.
No. In fact, I'm appreciating where this is going, and that's what I was getting ready to say. Is that even though we're a pig podcast, I like to underscore for those listening that are just getting started or thinking, okay, I want to be a one-trick pony and just focus solely on pigs and talk about the benefits of a polyculture. So that was going to be my other comment was the fact that you provide poultry as well. So the chickens and the turkey and you have those other protein sources, but the turn on your the cash flow is beneficial. I think we've talked about this in the past, that when you look at broilers that you finish in 8 weeks versus a pig that can go 6 to 8 months, then you've got that spectrum of cash flow that helps with your business model as well and the structure that you put your farm together with.
Exactly. So if you are relying on what you can grow and produce, especially if you're trying to do it from a small scale, like earlier I talked about how we bought a few egg layers and then we bought 20 broilers, you know what I mean? And that could turn over until we had enough money to buy a couple pigs and sell that. So then you buy 2 more piglets, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to just be able to turn over from scratch continually makes the machine go, right? The engine turn.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this question, because this is I'm sure other people are thinking about this as well. So you are as rurally located as you are. How do you deal with processing, and how much does that eat into your overhead? Is that something where you're traveling hours and hours for processing? Are you fortunate to have something right there? Are you doing some of your poultry on farm?
Yeah, so it's definitely a challenge. We do have a small local processor that's about 40 miles down the road in a little town just off the reservation. And we, for a while, all we did was sell whole and half hogs. And then I think we had maybe split it into quarters. So we were doing all custom, and they are also a state inspected facility. So we did that for a couple years, bought an old little 2-horse trailer. It could bring 4 pigs down at a time. But first couple times, they thought we were totally nuts. But now we've got a good relationship with them down there. Right. They know me well. And so we did that and have state inspected. And just in the past year, we've started bringing some hogs. We were able to buy a bigger trailer that we can bring 8 to 10 hogs at a time, about 3.5 hours away to a USDA facility. But the logistics of that are challenging too. Just getting there. Like yesterday, I left at 3 a.m. to get up to the processor by 6:30 in the morning to drop off pigs, and that's a USDA process. So we are moving our retail cuts to USDA. I'd like to be able to just get into Nebraska to sell, right? That sort of thing, or even possibly into Wyoming, which we're not too far from. So we've done state inspected, like I said, and we're slowly moving into, as it becomes feasible for us to do larger amounts at a time, USDA processing. But there's always challenges. Everyone has stories about challenges in processing, whether you have a whole bunch around you or none at all. It seems to be the theme of the bottleneck, right?
Yeah, and that's my goodness, and that's so frustrating too, especially because we're a little bit similar in the fact that we've got other state borders close to us, and we're a state inspected state as well. And in that situation, it's like, man, I love the relationship I have with my state inspected because he's close. It's a little more personal. You usually have those better relationships than you do with a large USDA processor. But the fact that you can't, as soon as you cross that state line, then it automatically becomes inappropriate. It's frustrating.
Right.
Yeah, very frustrating.
Right.
I'm sure.
So I can have people 15 miles away. They can come to the farm and purchase in state, right? Then they can leave with their meat. I can't bring anything right down to, I know, like a little town right in Nebraska that has a weekly farmer's market. I think that would be great, but that's a no-no. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Don't get me started.
There's challenges, and as we grow, it opens up more opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's one of those things that as we as producers, small producers, hopefully there's more of us. We just keep growing and growing, and then hopefully our state ag departments will start to look at this and see. It's I have conversations with our state ag, and they're like, it's frustrating. We get it. We understand. We got to have some guidelines in place, but it really doesn't make sense, like you said, that somebody can cross. In our situation, somebody can cross the Ohio River, come over to see me, buy a bunch of stuff, and take it back, and it's fine. But God forbid I meet him on the other side of the Ohio to say, here's a truckload of stuff. So,
yeah. So, I mean, I understand just like you, both perspectives. I mean, the U.S. has a massive food system that is also largely considered the safest in the world. So we got to this point by setting this up, but the pendulum needs to swing so that we can maintain safe food, but just create better access across the board. I think everybody should be able to have good tasting food, if nothing else, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, AJ, let's do this. Let's talk about future plans. So it sounds like, if I was hearing you correctly, your current operation, sounds like you're tying up about 4 acres with your pig operation, and I assume obviously your poultry's doing some other there, but what is your plans with the expansion? So if we look down the corridor in 5 years, where do you see yourself? Are you still on that farm? Are you expanding? Are you kind of staying status quo? What do you think?
I think that what I want to continue to work towards is kind of managing a bit more land and figuring out how to better utilize the resource to stack species. I would like to get into some different grazing. Just on this 10 acres that I've been here for a little over 4 years, definitely have watched the plant material and the soil kind of evolve. And so I'm realizing that potentially we could get other animals in so that they complement each other. Our resource in western South Dakota is grass. Pigs are hard on dry land grass. We get about 15 inches of rain a year. We're well below on pace for that this year. So the grass grows for a couple months every year, and then that's what you have. So I'd like to get into just a little bit larger scale land management area where we're using grazing and disturbance of pigs and poultry for cleanup. I think that bringing it all together is kind of the longer term goal.
Yeah. No, excellent. So are you seeing in the 4 years you've been there, are you seeing the results of your rotational processing? Are you seeing a regenerative element there? Has it really manifested itself yet, or is it still? Are you still kind of figuring it out? Are you seeing land improvement, pasture improvement?
Yeah. So in certain areas, and I'd say I'd give this just as much by chance as planning and skill. In some of our paddocks, we know that we have timed better, and we've added significant amounts of organic material to a couple of the paddocks that in the areas they were essentially bare when I first moved down to this property. And it's funny. About a year ago, they updated, or maybe it was a year and a half ago, they updated the Google Maps image, and you can see it must have been late in the summer or so, and you can see the direct lineage of the greenness and what we had planted behind and where the pigs were at that point. I'd say summers we have in a couple areas that have been used as sacrifice areas, and there's a lot of growth in there. It's not necessarily all the plant material that we want it to be growing, but also I think that weeds kind of tell a story. They tell you what your soil needs. And so I guess to sum it up, in certain sections we are seeing success, and in some sections we are definitely trying to improve and making sure we're continuing to make right decisions. It doesn't take a lot to make a mistake and then step back or get put back a couple steps on delicate land like that. So we're getting better and better at it. I've definitely seen a wider range in our species, in our pig paddocks, and a significant improvement in the amount of organic material that is in the area. So we like seeing that.
Yeah, man. I don't realize how much I take for granted the water I get in our neighborhood, and then talk to somebody like you dealing with that 15 inches. That doesn't seem like a lot. Let's see, we got a half inch of rain, almost like 0.4, about a week or two ago, and then I don't think we had a drop for 6 weeks before that. Yeah, wow. Yeah,
it's dry.
Yeah, with everything going on with hurricanes and stuff, I think we've had about 8 inches of rain over the last 3 weeks. So it's been substantial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to trade you.
Ecosystems are adapted to it, right? And
right.
You can find what works there. There's going to be way differences in what it looks like there, where I'm sure that you can deal with, or you have issues with plugging up and hard compaction and mud.
Oh yeah,
that's not necessarily the same what we're looking at here, you know.
Yeah, my big thing with where I'm located in West Virginia is topography. So erosion is a huge concern. So that's always the struggle, is mitigating soil loss, simply because pigs on the side of a hill and then 8 inches of rain, it's not a good combination sometimes.
Farming is a wonderful, endless task on problem solving, is it not?
Indeed, yes, it is, exactly. Excellent. Well, AJ, let me wrap up here with a question I like to ask everybody that comes on the podcast, and I won't let you escape this one either. But what is your best experience or favorite part about raising pigs on pasture?
My introduction to fresh side pork, or pork belly. It's labeled as side pork here. And I had never had, and I love side pork now. I think being able to eat the product, the fruits of the labor that is better tasting food than I've ever had is so enjoyable to me. And I think it's great. That's my favorite part.
Wonderful.
Is eating good food.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. Cut to the chase. Nothing deep philosophical here. I definitely feel you on that one, man. Well, if people want to learn more about your farm, where can they find you online?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook and Instagram at Homegrown Pork and Poultry, and at homegrownporkandpoultry.com is our website.
Excellent.
Anybody out there that has questions or wants to chat, I love talking about the things that we're doing, the projects that we're working on. And if you're ever cruising through Western South Dakota, call me up and love to visit.
Cool. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I pray you have good luck with that flat tire, that it's not anymore.
We'll get to it this afternoon.
All right. Sounds good, man.
Thanks, man. This was great.
Yeah, appreciate talking with you. Take care. Well, I really appreciate AJ coming on the podcast. I thought that was an interesting take on what he's got going on up there in South Dakota. Well, I appreciate everyone that has responded and that we have scheduled to come on the podcast. I think we definitely have enough interviews lined up. We're actually in the books already to get us through the holiday season and into January. But that doesn't mean we're not looking for more. So if you would like to be on the podcast, if you would like to have a specific conversation about a specific topic, then let us know. Or if you would like to recommend somebody to be on the podcast, just go to redtoolhouse.com. Click on the Pastured Pig Podcast link. Soon that's going to be the pasturedpig.com website where we have all this. Hoping to launch that here before the end of the year. But anyway, click on that link. You'll see the contact form. It's just some basic information you can put in there that helps me figure out who to reach out to and when to reach out and what we're going to talk about. So check that out if you want to come on or you know somebody that needs to be on there. Well, I pray everyone have a great week out in the pasture, and we look forward to sitting down and talking with one of you all again. All right, take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.